Good evening, and a warm welcome back to our journey through the annals of mythology. Tonight, we plunge headfirst into the intoxicating world of Greek mythology. As always, I'm eager to hear where in the world you're joining us from, so find a comfortable spot, maybe brew a cup of tea, and let's begin our tale. Before Olympus graced the heavens, before the earth spread its vast expanse, before the seas churned with life, before the sky arched overhead, there existed only chaos. But this wasn't the chaos of modern understanding, disorder, confusion, frenzy. This was something far more ancient, predating language itself. Chaos was a yawning void, a limitless emptiness devoid of form, direction, or purpose. It wasn't inherently evil, nor was it good or even neutral. It simply was. Imagine a canvas so vast it holds nothing, an ocean so deep it knows no floor. From this primordial nothingness, the first stirrings of existence began to coalesce. Gaia, the earth, immense and unshakable, a foundation upon which all would be built. Tartarus, the abyss beneath the earth, a realm of impenetrable darkness and unspeakable dread, the ultimate prison. And Eros, the force of love and desire, the binding agent, the irresistible pull that would drive all future creation. These were not gods in the way we typically envision them, not yet. They were elemental truths, raw and untamed, given form and presence. Then emerged Nyx, the night, cloaked in a shadow so profound that even chaos itself recoiled. A being of immense power, she commanded the darkness itself. She was followed by Erebus, the darkness of the underworld, who would forever dwell beside her in that primal silence, a constant companion in the eternal night. From the union of night and darkness sprung forth ether, the pure, radiant upper air breathed by the gods, the very essence of celestial grace. And Hera, the day, who from the very beginning was fated to chase her mother endlessly across the sky, a never-ending pursuit. Thus the cycle of night and day was born, not through scientific explanation, but through myth, through a family of strange, invisible titans who illuminated and dimmed the sky with each passing hour, a celestial dance choreographed by forces beyond human comprehension. Gaia, the earth herself, did not remain passive. She was patient and fertile, brimming with potential. From her own being, she brought forth Uranus, the sky, vast and star-strewn, arching over all. He was both her son and her consort, an embodiment of the heavens themselves. And when he arched over her, stretching across the heavens like an infinite blue canvas, the world found its first true shape, a domed sky above a broad and endless plain, the beginning of order amidst the chaos. Gaia also birthed the mountains, tall and wild, reaching towards the heavens with jagged peaks and silent majesty. And Pontus the sea, who surged with a will of his own, an untamed and powerful force long before ships sailed his surface or sea monsters lurked in his depths. Together, earth and sky became the first great pair, the foundational couple of the cosmos. Their union brought forth the Titans, the first generation of powerful beings who would rule the cosmos long before Zeus and his Olympian kin rose to power. Imagine beings of immense scale, their voices like thunder, their footsteps shaking the very foundations of the world. There were 12 Titans in all, 6 sons and 6 daughters, each vast and elemental in their own right. Oceanus, the encircling river, a boundless stream that defined the edge of the world. Hyperion, the lord of light, the radiant embodiment of the sun's power. Coeus, the inquirer, the titan of intellect and inquisitive thought. Creus, the constellation-bearer, responsible for the celestial order of the stars. Iapetus, the ancestor of men, the father of Prometheus and Epimetheus. And Cronus, the youngest and most cunning, the titan of time, whose name would become synonymous with power and paranoia. Among the daughters, Theia, shining mother of the sun and moon, a source of radiant light in the cosmos. Rhea, future mother of gods, destined for both greatness and sorrow. Themis, embodiment of divine law, upholder of cosmic order. Demosthene, the memory of all things, the keeper of knowledge and history. Phoebe, the radiant one associated with the moon and prophecy. And Tethys, the nourishing sea, the source of all fresh water. But Gaia's womb was not finished with them. She bore monstrous children as well, beings of immense strength and terrifying dread. First came the Cyclopes, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, each with a single eye burning like a forge in the center of their brow. They were the smiths of lightning, strong and simple, and they feared no god nor giant. Imagine the raw power contained in a single glance, a gaze that could melt mountains. Then came the Hecatoncheires, the hundred-handed ones, each of them enormous and terrible to behold, with 50 heads and 100 arms each, capable of stirring the very foundations of the world when enraged. Their strength was legendary, their fury unmatched. Uranus, though lord of the sky, trembled at the sight of these monstrous offspring. Ashamed and frightened by their grotesque strength, he forced them back into Gaia's womb, the depths of earth itself, and sealed them there, hidden away beneath layers of rock and grief. He saw them not as children, but as a threat to his dominion. Gaia groaned beneath their weight. The earth, once proud and nurturing, now suffered with every breath. It was in this pain that she began to scheme, plotting her revenge against the husband who had betrayed her. But that is a story for another day. For now, remember this. In the oldest age, before law or justice, before sword or plow, the world was made not with hands, but with force and union and grief. Chaos birthed the first forms, but it was Gaia, the great mother, who gave them ground to stand upon. The union of Gaia and Uranus, earth and sky, was the first great marriage of the cosmos. It was not a marriage of altars or witnesses, but of necessity and nature. The sky stretched over the earth, holding her tightly, pressing her beneath his star-studded body night after night. From their joining came the Titans and other mighty offspring, but also a deep and growing sorrow. For Uranus, though proud and vast, was a jealous and fearful father. He saw in the monstrous children Gaia bore not strength, but a threat to his dominion. He looked upon the Cyclopes and the hundred-handed giants with revulsion, not wonder, and with swift, cruel judgment. He thrust them back into Gaia's womb, deep into the belly of the earth, where no light reached and no voice could echo. Gaia groaned beneath their weight. It was not only the agony of bearing them within her again, but the betrayal of her consort, of Sky, who should have cherished their children as she did. Night after night, Uranus descended upon her, pressing down the heavens to meet the earth. Blind to her pain and deaf to her grief, she could endure no longer. And so, from her own flesh, she fashioned a weapon, not of bronze or iron, for such things had not yet been dreamed, but a great sickle of unyielding flint, jagged as truth and sharp as vengeance, a tool of liberation and retribution. Then she went to her Titan sons, the firstborn and mightiest among her children, and laid bare her suffering. "Your father has wronged me," she said, her voice a low rumble that shook the earth. "He has caged your brothers. He has silenced the womb that bore you. Who among you will aid me?" One by one they turned away, fearful of their father's might. But only Cronus, the youngest, the shrewdest, the one with watchful eyes and a patient heart, stepped forward. "I will do it," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "Give me the blade." So Gaia set the trap. She waited for Uranus to descend as he always did, laying himself across her in the dark. And from the shadows, Cronus sprang. With a steady hand and no hesitation, he brought the sickle down upon his father. The sky shook with Uranus's cry as the blade bit deep, severing the source of his power. Cronus cast the bloodied flesh into the sea, and from the crimson foam that rose upon the waves, something new was born, a figure of impossible beauty, terrible and irresistible in equal measure. From that white froth came Aphrodite, goddess of love and desire, who would later cause kings to fall and empires to burn. She stepped ashore at Cyprus, radiant and serene, untouched by the violence of her origin, a goddess born from bloodshed yet embodying pure beauty. But Gaia's vengeance did not end with blood. From the droplets that fell upon the earth sprang other beings, the Furies, cloaked in shadow and vengeance, who would haunt oathbreakers and kinslayers until the end of days. The giants, who in time would rise up against the gods themselves, and the Meliai, nymphs of the ash trees, guardians of the wild and the old ways. Uranus, wounded and dethroned, vanished into the heavens, leaving the world to his children. Before he fled, it is said he spoke a final curse, one that would ring through time like a bell. "Just as I was overthrown by my son," he rasped, his voice filled with pain and resentment, "so too shall he be overthrown by his own." It was not a prophecy he invented, but a truth Gaia had already whispered, and Cronus heard it well. He took the sky throne and wrapped himself in power, but from the moment he grasped it, he began to fear what his father had warned. Thus ended the reign of Uranus, the first king of the cosmos, and began the age of the Titans. Yet already in the womb of time, the next storm was stirring. With Uranus cast down and the sky no longer pressed so tightly upon the earth, the world breathed anew. The Titans, freed from their father's yoke, now stood tall beneath the heavens, and Cronus, the youngest and most cunning among them, claimed dominion over all. He was not a god of chaos or cruelty, as his father had been in the end, but he ruled with a cautious and suspicious heart. The sickle he had used to bring down Uranus remained hidden, buried in the earth or cast into the sea, its blade remembered but unseen, like a secret sin. Cronus had delivered his mother from torment and his siblings from imprisonment. Yet from the very moment he sat on the throne of the cosmos, his mind was troubled by the prophecy that had driven him to rebellion. The words of his dying father echoed through him like a second heartbeat, that he too would be cast down by his own child. So Cronus took a wife, as kings must. He chose Rhea, his sister, a titaness of gentle strength and deep wisdom, though her name would one day be spoken in the same breath as pain. Together they ruled through a time that later poets would remember as a golden age, a time when mortals, newly created, lived in peace, free from suffering, untouched by winter or war, and the fruits of the earth ripened without need for toil. It was an age before kings had armies, before men built walls or worshipped temples, when justice moved unseen among humankind and no one locked their doors. But such peace, as the world has always known, does not last. In time, Rhea began to bear children, and as each was born, Cronus remembered his father's curse. He did not hesitate. The moment Rhea placed each newborn in his arms, first Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, he opened wide his jaws and swallowed them whole. Not a trace was left, not a cry, not a cradle, only the knowledge that they were gone, hidden within their father's belly like seeds in winter soil. A horrifying act of preventative destruction. He told Rhea it was necessary, that he would not suffer the same fate as Uranus, that the throne must be protected. Rhea, though proud and strong, was powerless against him. She wept, but her tears changed nothing. 5 times she gave birth, and 5 times she lost her children to the hunger of her husband's fear, but the 6th time she resolved to act. When she felt the child stir in her womb, she did not go to Cronus. She fled instead to the island of Crete, where the mountains met the sky and deep caves opened beneath the earth. There, hidden among shepherds and nymphs, she gave birth to her youngest son, Zeus. And from the moment of his birth, Rhea knew he was different. His cry shook the trees, his eyes opened before his first breath, and when he grasped her finger, he held it with the strength of fate itself. To deceive Cronus, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and presented it to him with trembling hands. He swallowed it greedily, thinking the danger had passed, but beneath Mount Ida, the infant Zeus was nursed in secret. He was guarded by the Curetes, warriors who danced and clashed their shields to drown out the sound of his cries, a cacophony of protection, and fed by the goat Amalthea, whose milk gave him strength beyond measure. And as Zeus grew, so did the storm that would one day break the world. Yet for now, the age of Cronus held. The sky was high, the earth was green, and the Titans ruled from their thrones, oblivious to the gathering wind. But deep within Cronus, 5 children stirred in the dark, and far to the west, a child born in secrecy watched the stars and waited. In the hidden folds of Mount Ida, where the air was thin and the wind whispered ancient names through stone and pine, Zeus grew to manhood. Raised in secret, far from his father's gaze, he learned of the world not through books or scrolls, but from the silence of the high peaks, the rustling of leaves, and the cautious stories murmured by his guardians in firelight. He drank the milk of the divine goat Amalthea, who had nourished him from birth, and from her broken horn, torn by accident or omen, was born the cornucopia, symbol of endless bounty. When Amalthea died, Zeus hung her hide among the stars in her honor, and her memory became part of the sky he would one day command. But he was not born to stargazing or solitude. The blood in his veins was thick with prophecy, and his bones carried the weight of rebellion. As he came of age, Gaia herself began to stir. She remembered the betrayal of Cronus, the pain of her imprisoned sons, the hundred-handed ones, and the Cyclopes buried deep in Tartarus. Her vengeance had not ended with Uranus. It had only been delayed. With words as old as stone, she whispered truth into Zeus's dreams, and in his waking hours she guided his steps. First, she led him to Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, whose counsel was shrewd and whose loyalty leaned toward the future. With Metis' aid, Zeus fashioned a plan. Strike against Cronus, a king of Titans, and time would require more than strength. It would demand cunning. Zeus returned in disguise to the house of his father, and there, with Metis' craft, he offered Cronus a potion laced in wine, bittersweet and thick as honey. The drink stirred the old Titan's gut, and at last, with a shudder and a groan, Cronus vomited forth the children he had swallowed long ago. They came not as infants, but full-grown and gleaming, clad in the strength of gods, reborn into a world already poised for war. First Hestia, hearth and flame, the protector of home and family. Then Demeter, goddess of the grain, the bringer of harvest and sustenance. Then regal Hera, proud and sharp-eyed, the queen of the gods and protector of marriage. Then Hades, lord of the dead, the silent ruler of the underworld. And at last Poseidon, master of the deep, the wielder of the trident and shaker of the earth. The six siblings stood together for the first time as one and looked to the throne that had cast them into darkness. They would not forget. But Cronus was not without allies. The Titans rallied to him, his brothers and sisters gathering atop Mount Othrys, the old seat of power in the south. Oceanus remained apart, too old or too wise for blood feuds, but the others, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, and Iapetus, took up arms. So began the war the poets called Titanomachy, the clash of Titans and Olympians, a conflict that would shake the cosmos to its very core. A war that tore across the heavens and split the earth to its core. For 10 years the battle raged without end. The sky darkened with storm and smoke. Thunder and fire echoed across the mountains, and the world below, still young and silent, watched in dread as its masters fought for the right to rule. The Titans held Othrys, tall and time-worn, while Zeus and his kin made their stand upon Mount Olympus, a peak still unscarred by war. The battles were terrible and unrelenting. Lightning tore open the skies and tidal waves swallowed islands whole. Volcanoes bled fire and winds howled like wolves. At times the war seemed endless, neither side able to land the final blow. But Gaia, ever watchful, knew that the balance could not tip without what had been long buried. She counseled Zeus once more. If he were to win, he must descend into Tartarus and free his monstrous uncles, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, whom Cronus had kept locked in chains out of fear. With his siblings beside him, Zeus broke the gates of the underworld and released the imprisoned powers. The Cyclopes, grateful and eager, gifted Zeus his greatest weapons, the thunderbolt, the symbol of sky and storm. To Poseidon they gave the trident with which he would command the seas, and to Hades a helm of darkness that would make him unseen. The Hecatoncheires, giants with 100 hands, joined the fight at last, hurling mountains like stones and battering the Titans with the fury of ancient things unbound. With these allies the tide turned. The Olympians pressed forward with a fury no Titan could match. Cronus, proud and unyielding, fought to the last. But the prophecy, as always, unfolded without mercy. The Titans fell. One by one they were driven down, cast from the high places of the earth. Zeus did not slay them. He imprisoned them as his father had done before. Deep into Tartarus they were hurled, bound in chains forged by the hundred-handed ones behind bronze gates that would never rust or break. Only a few escaped that fate. Prometheus and Epimetheus, who had sided with the gods, and Themis, who foresaw the justice of their rule. So ended the reign of the Titans. The sky cleared, and the world, scarred by fire and war, began to heal. The throne passed to Zeus, not by birthright, but by might and wisdom and fate fulfilled. Yet even as he claimed the heavens, the shadow of Cronus's curse lingered behind him like the echo of an old song. For power once seized must always be watched, and no ruler, god or mortal, sits secure forever. When the war was over and the world lay quiet beneath the sky once more, the victors stood amidst the rubble of creation. The Titans were chained in the depths of Tartarus, their groans swallowed by that black abyss from which no echo returned. The old order had been broken, but with the storm of war ended, the gods faced a new challenge, perhaps greater than any battle, to rule. For conquest may be won with fire and fury, but rule demands judgment, patience, and division. The world was wide and wild and filled with powers both known and yet unnamed. It could not be held by one alone. Zeus, eldest among the gods now born again, stood at the center of this new age. Though not the firstborn, he was first in might, first in cunning, and first to move when action was demanded. But the old laws, carved not on stone but into the bones of the cosmos itself, did not grant him sole dominion. He had two brothers, both tempered by war and made strong in their own right. Poseidon, who had driven the sea to foam in his wrath, and Hades, who had worn the helm of darkness and moved unseen through battlefield and cavern alike. They too had shed blood, taken risks, and suffered loss. The throne of this was to Zeus, with his to hate there he, and the three brothers, now kings in their own realms, swore not to war among themselves, lest the world break anew. They built their thrones and gathered their followers. On Mount Olympus, high above the clouds, Zeus called the gods to council. There beside him stood his sisters, Hera, proud and sharp as winter ice, Demeter, whose steps awakened spring, and Hestia, ever burning at the hearth of every home. And others came, new and old, Athena, born from wisdom and war, Apollo, golden and far-seeing, Artemis, silent and swift, Ares, bloody-handed, Hermes, fleet of foot and mind, Hephaestus, limping but brilliant, and Aphrodite, whose smile could unravel kings. It was the beginning of a new age, the age of Olympus. But though the thrones had been set and the realms divided, the world would not stay still for long. The gods, for all their power, were not immune to pride, nor love, nor rage, and the mortals who now began to rise across the lands would bring their own stories, their own wars, and their own share of sorrow. The heavens had been won, but peace is never simple when gods sit the throne. As the smoke of war dissipated and sunlight once more graced the world, Mount Olympus emerged as the resplendent center of a new divine order. The Titans, in their ancient might, had held court upon Mount Othrys in the south, a place of harsh primordial power perpetually cloaked in storm. But Olympus, rising in the north, dwarfed even Othrys. Its peak, perpetually wreathed in clouds and steeped in myth, stood as more than just a geographical location. It was a liminal space, a threshold where the terrestrial realm met the celestial, where mortal existence ended and the divine began. It was here, upon this sacred summit, that Zeus, having seized dominion over the heavens through a blend of destiny and brute force, convened the new pantheon of gods. The Olympian court bore little resemblance to the kingdoms of men. No brick-paved roads led to its pearly gates, no heralds trumpeted the arrival of guests, and no legion stood guard at its base. The gods required no such mundane defenses. The very air surrounding Olympus served as their shield, an ethereal barrier too rarefied for mortal lungs to bear. Olympus was said to be untouched by the ravages of weather. No storms, no snow, no decay marred its perfection. Its halls were crafted from shimmering marble and solidified clouds, its ceilings vaulted with constellations, and its corridors so expansive that winds roamed freely through them. Here the gods did not appear as fleeting shadows or ominous signs, but in their full awe-inspiring forms, radiant, terrible, and more vibrantly alive than any creature that walked the earth below. At the apex of Olympus reigned Zeus, king of gods and men, enthroned upon a seat forged from thunder itself. He ruled not by sheer strength alone, though his power was unmatched, but by the dictates of fate and the enduring memory of the Titanomachy. His voice resonated like distant thunder, and his eyes penetrated beyond clouds and time. In his hand he wielded the thunderbolt, the Cyclopes' gift, the ultimate symbol of divine judgment, swift and irrevocable. Yet even Zeus did not rule in isolation. Around him stood the other Olympians, each a cornerstone of the world's new order. Hera sat beside him not merely as his wife, but as his queen, a sovereign in her own right. She was the goddess of marriage, of queenship, and of childbirth, but also the silent, simmering fury of a woman wronged. Proud and unyielding, Hera never forgot a slight. and her jealousy would one day shape the destinies of gods and mortals alike. Her crown was not a gift bestowed, but a hard-won prize, forged in the crucible of betrayal and bound by the most sacred oaths of Olympus. Demeter was next, the goddess of grain and growth. Where her bare feet touched the earth, the soil softened, and seeds began to stir. Her presence brought forth abundance and prosperity, and without her the fields lay barren and desolate. Like the others, she did not remain confined to the heights of Olympus, amidst the thunder and marble, but often descended to the mortal realm, watching over the plowmen and mothers who whispered her name in supplication at dawn. She was older than most of the Olympians, more reserved than many, but no one dared to underestimate her profound power. Then there was Hestia, goddess of the hearth, the firstborn of Cronus and Rhea, and the last to be freed from her father's belly. She sought no grand temples, no epic myths, no bloody wars, no passionate lovers. Her domain was the quiet one. Instead, she tended the eternal flame at the heart of Olympus and watched over every home and hearth on earth. Her power was subtle but omnipresent, for as long as a fire burned in a household, Hestia dwelled there too. The younger gods arrived in time, some born on Olympus, others brought forth through more unconventional means. Athena was the first among them, born not of a womb, but of pure, unadulterated wisdom. When Zeus swallowed Metis, fearing her unborn child would surpass him in power and cunning, he believed the matter settled, but Metis did not die. She lived on within him, whispering, plotting, and crafting knowledge in the darkness of his mind. One fateful day, Zeus cried out in agony, and with a mighty blow to his skull, Athena sprang forth, fully grown, clad in shining bronze armor, a spear clutched firmly in her hand. Her eyes were clear and sharp as flint. She became the goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, and righteous justice, a virgin warrior with no patience for frivolity or empty boasts. Apollo and Artemis followed, twins born of Leto, a titaness who wandered long and wearily in search of a place to give birth. No land dared offer her sanctuary, for Hera's wrath was vast and vengeful. At last the floating island of Delos accepted her, and there she delivered her children. Apollo, golden-haired and radiant, became the god of light, prophecy, music, and healing. His sister Artemis, swift and silver, was the goddess of the hunt, of wild creatures, and of the moon's gentle glow. Together they represented a new generation of gods, restless, vibrant, and intimately connected to the mortal world. Then came Ares, god of war and slaughter, son of Zeus and Hera, but beloved by neither. He was pure strength without discipline, blind rage without cause, and though his name inspired fear, he was not often honored. War followed him like a dark shadow, and he reveled in its chaotic embrace, but he was frequently outmaneuvered by those who valued cunning and wisdom over brute force. His antithesis was Hephaestus, the lame god of the forge, master craftsman of fire and metal. Whether he was born of Hera alone or thrown from Olympus by Zeus in a fit of rage, both tales were told and retold throughout the ages. He found solace in metal, crafting wonders with hammer and fire. From his skilled hands came impenetrable armor, magnificent palaces, and intricate automatons that moved with uncanny grace. Though physically impaired, he was among the most indispensable of the gods. Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and desire, did not arrive through birth, but from the sea foam born of Uranus's severed flesh cast into the turbulent waters. She rose from the surf near Cyprus, as breathtakingly beautiful as she was dangerously alluring. Love, lust, jealousy, and ruin followed in her wake wherever she ventured. Even Zeus could not fully control her influence. She bound gods and mortals alike with a single glance, and though she smiled often, it was never without consequence. Hermes, the trickster and herald, was the last of this early Olympian court to arrive. Son of Zeus and the nymph Maia, he moved swiftly between worlds. Winged sandals adorned his feet, and a mischievous grin played upon his lips. He stole Apollo's cattle on the very day of his birth, sang a soothing song to conceal his theft, and made himself indispensable before he could even walk. He became the messenger of the gods, the guide of souls, the patron of thieves and travelers. Wherever Hermes went, borders dissolved and secrets came to light. This was the Olympian court, a gathering not of flawless saints, but of raw, flawed, radiant, and immensely powerful beings. They quarreled like siblings, took sides in mortal affairs, fell in love, betrayed each other, engaged in petty rivalries, and meted out divine justice. But above all else, they ruled from Olympus. They watched over the world below and shaped it according to their whims and desires. The age of Titans had passed, and in its place arose an era of stories, tales of gods who walked among men, of heroes born from their unions, and of a world forever transformed by the actions of the divine. The world now had its rulers, but peace, as always, remained a fragile thing, and fate had not yet uttered its final word. With a single decisive stroke, he ended her life, severing Medusa's head from her body. From the crimson spray that erupted forth, two beings were born: Pegasus, the magnificent winged horse, and Chrysaor, the warrior brandishing a golden blade. These were the children of Poseidon, god of the sea, their existence forged in the very moment of Medusa's demise. As Medusa's Gorgon sisters shrieked in anguish, their serpentine hair writhing in the air, Perseus, cloaked in shadow by the helm of darkness, vanished like mist. The deed was done. He retraced his steps along the long road, the sack containing his prize heavy upon his shoulder, its power undiminished. Along his journey, he happened upon the shores of Ethiopia. There he found a kingdom in torment, punished by Poseidon for the vanity of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Their daughter, the fair Andromeda, had been chained to a rock as a sacrifice to a monstrous sea creature unleashed by the god's wrath. Perseus, beholding her beauty and innocence amidst such despair, was moved to action. He confronted the beast, its scales shimmering under the harsh sun, its jaws capable of crushing bone. With cunning and courage, Perseus slew the monster, its roars echoing across the desolate beach. Then, wielding the Gorgon's head, he turned the creature into stone, a lasting monument to his valor. He claimed Andromeda as his bride, promising her a life free from fear and filled with love. She would follow him westward, becoming the mother of his line, ensuring the continuation of his heroic legacy. When Perseus finally returned to Seriphos, Polydectes, the cruel king, greeted him with disbelief and scorn. He scoffed at Perseus's tale, mocking his supposed victory. Perseus, his patience exhausted, reached into the sack and withdrew Medusa's severed head. The king and his entire court were instantly petrified, frozen in their arrogance and disbelief, transformed into a silent tableau of stone. Dictys, the kind fisherman who had offered shelter to Perseus's mother, Danae, and the young hero himself, was crowned king in Polydectes' stead. The cycle of cruelty for the moment was broken, replaced by justice and compassion. But prophecy, once uttered, is not so easily denied, clung to Perseus like a shadow. He journeyed to Argos, where King Acrisius, haunted by the oracle's prophecy that his grandson would kill him, fled in terror rather than face the young man he had once condemned to death. Fate, however, is relentless. At the funeral games of a neighboring king, Perseus, participating in the discus throw, accidentally struck an old man in the crowd. It was Acrisius, his grandfather, who died without ever knowing that his death was not an act of malice, but a tragic accident long foretold. Thus the circle closed, as it so often does in myth. Perseus had unwittingly fulfilled the prophecy, though not through intent. He had slain a monster, rescued a maiden, founded a line of kings, and carried the weight of fate with dignity. He would not live forever, but his name would resonate through the ages, for from his blood would come Heracles, also known as Hercules, the next chapter in the saga of gods and men. If Perseus was the first great hero, Heracles was the mightiest. His name echoed like thunder across distant mountains, carrying weight in every land touched by the Hellenic spirit. He was not merely strong, he was larger than life itself, straddling the boundary between mortal and divine, joy and grief, triumph and tragedy. He was the great-grandson of Perseus, a son of Argos, and most importantly, a son of Zeus, king of the gods. And though the gods would bless him with unparalleled strength, they would also curse him with unimaginable suffering. His birth was itself a product of divine deception. Zeus, consumed by lust, desired Alcmene, wife of the Theban general Amphitryon. Disguised as her husband, the king of gods lay with her, extending a single night into 3. From that union came Heracles, and from Amphitryon a twin brother, Iphicles, mortal and unblessed with godly power. Hera, queen of the gods, as always watched from her throne with a cold and bitter eye. She knew her husband's infidelity, and she knew too well the threat that this child, half-god though he was, might one day pose to her own dominion. Even in the cradle, Heracles bore the mark of the divine. Hera, seeking to eliminate the threat early, sent 2 serpents into the nursery to strangle the infant. But the child, with his chubby hands, grasped the snakes and throttled them both, one in each fist, before any nurse could even scream. From that moment, his fame began to spread. As a youth, he received instruction in all the arts befitting a nobleman: music, archery, wrestling, and chariot racing. Yet there was something untamed within him, a restlessness of soul that no lyre or tutor could tame. Manhood brought him both love and ruin. He married Megara, daughter of the Theban king Creon, and for a time he knew peace, fathering sons and defending his city. But Hera had not forgotten. In a fit of divine wrath, she clouded Heracles' mind with madness. Raging through his own halls, he slaughtered his wife and children with the same hands that had once cradled them. When the madness subsided and his vision cleared, he was confronted with the blood and ruin of his own house. His cries of anguish reached Olympus, but no god answered. To atone for his unspeakable crime, he sought out the oracle of Delphi. The Pythia, speaking in riddles, told him he must submit to the will of Eurystheus, king of Tiryns, his cousin, lesser in strength but greater in fate. Only through servitude, through enduring unimaginable suffering, could Heracles earn redemption. Thus began the 12 labors, deeds so extraordinary and terrible that even the gods took notice. The first labor was to slay the Nemean lion, a beast whose golden hide was impervious to mortal weapons. Heracles cornered the lion in its cave and, relying solely on his unparalleled strength, strangled it with his bare hands. He then flayed the beast using its own claws and wore the skin as armor thereafter, a symbol of his triumph and a second hide to shield him from the world. The second labor was to defeat the Lernaean Hydra, a serpentine monster with 9 heads, 2 of which would regenerate for everyone severed. Heracles battled it in the swamps, aided by his nephew Iolaus, who cauterized the stumps as they were cut, preventing the heads from regrowing. From the final head, immortal and venomous, Heracles harvested its ichor and dipped his arrows in it, making them deadly even to gods. The third labor was the capture of the Ceryneian hind, a golden-horned deer sacred to Artemis, goddess of the hunt. Heracles pursued it for a year across hills and rivers before gently capturing it alive, earning the goddess's reluctant approval. The fourth labor led him to the Erymanthian boar, a monstrous beast of the wild. He wrestled it in the snow-covered heights of Arcadia and dragged it back to Tiryns, bound in chains, reveling in the sight of Eurystheus cowering in terror inside a bronze jar. The fifth task was far less glorious: to clean the Augean stables, home to thousands of cattle untouched by broom or shovel for decades. Heracles, ever resourceful, rerouted rivers to wash away the filth in a single day. The sixth labor was to drive away the Stymphalian birds, man-eating creatures with bronze beaks and razor-feathered wings. With the aid of Athena's rattle, he startled them into flight and shot them down from the sky. The seventh labor took him far west to capture the Cretan bull, a magnificent beast of divine origin that had fathered the Minotaur. Heracles wrestled it into submission and brought it back alive, the bull's gaze burning with madness and the fury of the sea. The eighth labor sent him north to Thrace, where he tamed the mares of Diomedes, flesh-eating horses that gnashed their teeth for human meat. He fed Diomedes, their master, to them, and the beasts became docile. The ninth labor required both diplomacy and bloodshed. Heracles was tasked with retrieving the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Though the queen initially agreed to gift it peacefully, Hera, ever meddling, spread rumors among the warrior women, and a fierce battle erupted. Heracles slew Hippolyta and escaped with the belt. The 10th labor led him to the edge of the known world, to Erythea, where he stole the cattle of Geryon, a triple-bodied giant. He erected the Pillars of Heracles at the Strait of Gibraltar and fought the giant, his herdsmen, and his monstrous hound all at once before driving the red cattle back across continents. But Eurystheus, determined to discredit him, declared 2 of the labors invalid, claiming that Iolaus had assisted with the Hydra and the rivers with the stables. 2 more were required: The 11th labor was to steal the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by the nymphs and a fearsome dragon coiled around the tree's base. Heracles tricked Atlas, the Titan forced to bear the weight of the sky, into retrieving the apples while he temporarily held the heavens. When Atlas attempted to abandon him with the burden, Heracles cleverly asked for a moment to adjust his cloak and, in that instant, shifted the sky back onto Atlas's shoulders before fleeing with the precious fruit. The 12th and final labor was the most harrowing, to descend into Hades itself and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed hound that guarded the gates of the underworld. Armed with nothing but his strength and courage, Heracles journeyed to the realm of the dead, presented himself before Hades, and with the god's grim permission, wrestled Cerberus into submission. He then dragged the snarling, frothing beast into the land of the living, a testament to his indomitable will. With that final labor, his redemption was won. Yet Heracles' life was not yet at peace. He fought more battles, took new wives, and fathered many children, but Hera's hatred remained a constant shadow. In the end, it was not a blade or a monster that brought him down, but the poisoned blood of the centaur Nessus, smeared upon a tunic gifted by his wife Deianira, who had been tricked into believing it was a love charm. As the poison burned through his flesh, Heracles built his own pyre upon Mount Oeta. No mortal dared light it until Philoctetes, a simple shepherd, stepped forward, moved by compassion. For this act of kindness, he was gifted the hero's legendary bow. Heracles was consumed by the flames, but in death he was reborn. Zeus lifted him to Olympus, where he was granted immortality and married to Hebe, goddess of youth. He became not just a hero, but a god. His labors, born of grief and guilt, became the very measure of heroism. Where others were remembered in stories, Heracles was venerated in shrines, honored in games, and forever etched in the hearts of men who, though mortal, dared to dream of greatness. If Heracles was the greatest of the Greek heroes, then Theseus was the most political, the most cunning, the most human. He was not merely a slayer of beasts or a breaker of curses. He was a builder of cities, a weaver of laws, and the founding spirit of Athens, the city that would one day claim the title of cradle of civilization. His story is a tapestry woven with myth and memory, with the thunder of heroes and the whisper of politics. Within him resided both brute strength and keen intellect, the dual spirit of a nation that worshipped Athena with both spear in hand and olive branch on her brow. Theseus was born of two fathers, King Aegeus of Athens and Poseidon, god of the sea. His mother, Hera, lay with both on the same night, one mortal, one divine. From this dual union came a boy destined for greatness, raised far from Athens in the city of Troezen, unaware of the royal blood flowing through his veins. Before at 6 hands he over Theseus, Medea, joy, and at this creed. From there he would go upon her that night. Theseus yet she awoke griefs. He established festivals and games, temples and laws, transforming Athens into a beacon of civilization. He was a hero of governance as much as of combat. He ventured again and again into the realm of myth, fighting alongside Heracles against the Amazons, journeying to the underworld with Pirithous, his reckless friend, to abduct Persephone herself from Hades. That audacious journey ended in disaster. Pirithous was swallowed by the earth, and Theseus was trapped upon the chair of forgetfulness, his memory slowly eroded by the air of death. Only Heracles, on his own labor in the underworld, managed to tear him free, but time, as always, marches onward. In the end, the Athenians, weary of kings and captivated by new heroes and emerging philosophies, drove Theseus into exile. He fled to the island of Skyros, where he was betrayed by a jealous king and cast from a cliff to his death. His bones would later be retrieved by the Athenians and buried with honor, but at the time of his death he was alone. No crowd, no crown, no chorus. And yet his legacy endured. Where Heracles symbolized the strength of the body, Theseus embodied the strength of the polis, the city, the law, the people bound together by more than blood. Athens would rise upon his shoulders, and though it would worship Athena, it would never forget the king who built its very foundations. Long before Troy burned and long after the Titans fell, there came a voyage unlike any other. A quest that traversed continents and defied gods, forged heroes into brotherhood, and culminated in betrayal and exile. It was a tale of dragons and oaths, of kings usurped and thrones reclaimed, and at the heart of it all was Jason, A prince exiled in childhood, a hero groomed not by war or prophecy, but by the long, slow burn of vengeance. His tale began in Iolcus, a coastal kingdom in Thessaly. Jason's father, Aeson, had been unjustly overthrown by his own brother, Peleus, a man who recognized no law but power. Fearing the boy who might one day challenge his rule, Peleus sought to kill Jason at birth, but Aeson, forewarned, sent the infant away, smuggled from the court and raised in secret by the wise centaur Chiron, the same Chiron who had trained Achilles, Asclepius, and other sons of destiny. Jason grew strong in the wild, nurtured by honey and knowledge, his limbs hardened by hunting, his mind sharpened by stories of kings who had fallen and risen again. Years passed. Jason returned, a man clad in a single sandal. As he crossed the river Anaurus, he had lost the other in the muddy current while selflessly carrying an old woman across. The woman, of course, was Hera in disguise, testing the young hero's character. When he entered the city, Peleus saw the one-sandaled stranger and turned pale, for the oracle had once warned him, "Beware the man who comes wearing only one shoe." Jason, bold but not reckless, did not draw a sword or raise an accusatory cry. He spoke plainly, declaring that he was Aeson's son and the rightful heir to the throne. Peleus, too cunning to act openly, feigned welcome and proposed a trial. "If you wish to be king," he said with a deceptive smile, "then prove yourself worthy. Retrieve for me the golden fleece from the far-off land of Colchis. Bring back that ancient treasure, and I will gladly yield the crown." The ram, the tale went, had carried Phrixus across the sea, and when Phrixus reached safety in Colchis, he sacrificed the beast in gratitude. Its fleece, as radiant as fire, was nailed to an oak tree in a sacred grove, guarded by serpents and perpetual shadows, watched over by King Aeetes, son of the sun god Helios. No Greek had ever ventured there and returned, but Jason, driven by a thirst for justice and the desire to reclaim his birthright, accepted the challenge. He summoned the greatest heroes of his age to join him on his perilous quest, and they came not as conscripted soldiers, but as willing volunteers, each seeking glory and the chance to etch their names into legend. Heracles arrived, his strength unmatched, and Orpheus, with his enchanting lyre. Atalanta, the swift huntress, Castor and Pollux, the twin sons of Zeus, Meleager, Theseus, Zeus, and Calais, the winged sons of the North Wind. 50 heroes in all. Together they boarded a ship named the Argo, meticulously crafted by Argus under the divine guidance of Athena. In its prow she placed a piece of sacred oak from Dodona, a timber imbued with the power to speak in prophecy, to warn of impending dangers and guide them along their fateful path. The ship itself was a character in the tale, whispering warnings and subtly influencing their decisions. They sailed east, past treacherous shores and through raging tempests, venturing into the realm of legend. Their initial trials were not against mythical monsters, but against flawed men. On the island of Lemnos, they encountered a land ruled by women who had slain all their husbands. There, Jason lay with Hypsipyle, the queen of the isle, and fathered sons he would never see grow to manhood. In Thrace, they came upon the blind seer Phineus, tormented by the Harpies, foul-winged creatures who befouled his food, leaving him perpetually hungry and miserable. Zeus and Calais, the winged Boreads, drove the Harpies away, earning Phineus's gratitude and a prophecy that would aid them on their journey. He revealed the path through the Symplegades, the deadly clashing rocks, two towering cliffs that slammed shut like monstrous jaws upon any ship that dared to pass between them. At Phineus's urging, they released a dove. The bird flew through, losing only a single tail feather as the rocks crashed together. The Argo followed at full speed, and the rocks caught her stern, but just barely, leaving her battered but afloat. From then on, the Symplegades remained still, forever fixed in place. The sea, it seemed, showed respect to those who dared to challenge its might. At long last they reached Colchis, a land of fire and iron, ruled by a king both powerful and ruthless. King Aeetes did not immediately slaughter them upon sight. Jason was a stranger, and in that ancient world, strangers were often afforded a degree of sacred protection. But Aeetes agreed to grant the fleece only if Jason could complete 3 seemingly impossible tasks. He must yoke fire-breathing bulls, plow a field with them, sow it with dragon's teeth, and then defeat the warriors who would rise from the soil, fully armed and thirsting for blood. These were not mere tests of courage, they were tests of the impossible, designed to ensure Jason's failure would have ended there with the Argonauts dead or enslaved had the gods not intervened. Eros, at Hera's instigation, struck Medea, daughter of Aeetes, with an arrow of love. She was a priestess of Hecate, goddess of magic, versed in herbs and poisons, untouched by men and as cold as moonlight. But at the sight of Jason, her heart betrayed her. She gave him a potion to shield him from the bull's fiery breath, taught him to hurl a stone among the earthborn warriors so they would turn on one another in a bloody frenzy, and finally led him to the golden fleece itself, guarded by a serpent that never slept. Medea chanted ancient spells, and the serpent, lulled into slumber, sank into the darkness. Jason seized the fleece, radiant and soft as molten gold, and fled with Medea into the night. Aeetes pursued them with his ships, but the lovers had bought themselves time with blood and treachery. Medea had seized her young brother Apsyrtus, brutally dismembered him, and scattered his pieces in the sea, forcing her father to halt his pursuit and gather the limbs for a proper burial. The Argo slipped away, stained by crime and magic, carrying its precious cargo and its ill-fated crew. Their return journey was a wandering odyssey, past Scylla and Charybdis, through lands fraught with danger and delay. At length they limped back to Iolcus, weary and scarred, but Peleus, true to his treacherous nature, refused to yield the crown. Medea, consumed by a thirst for vengeance, tricked Peleus's daughters into cutting him to pieces and boiling his remains alive, falsely claiming that it was a spell of rejuvenation that would restore his youth. Horrified by the queen's barbarity, the people of Iolcus rose in revolt. Jason, now tainted by treachery and associated with such heinous acts, was exiled, condemned to wander the land without a kingdom or a home. He fled to Corinth, where he and Medea lived for years in an uneasy peace, their love eroded by guilt and regret. But Jason, ever seeking legitimacy and a place in the world, cast Medea aside and chose a Corinthian princess for his bride, hoping to secure his future. Medea, wronged and consumed by vengeful fury, unleashed a wrath that no mortal could endure. She poisoned the bride's wedding gown, burning her to ashes, and then, in a final act of unspeakable horror, murdered her own sons by Jason, extinguishing his lineage and forever staining his name with infamy. Then she fled, carried away in a chariot drawn by dragons, a gift from her grandfather Helios, the sun god. Jason, broken and bereft, returned to Iolcus, a haunted figure amidst the ruins of his shattered dreams. In his final days, he wandered among the crumbling stones, forgotten and alone. One day, resting beneath the decaying hull of the Argo, now dry-docked and slowly rotting, a beam broke loose and struck his skull, crushing him instantly. So passed the great hero, not in glorious battle, not in triumphant victory, but in desolate silence, beneath the remnants of his past. The tale of Jason endured. For in the quest for the Golden Fleece, in the gathering of heroes, in love twisted into hatred, and in greatness undone by ambition, Greece found one of its most enduring myths, a cautionary tale of the intoxicating promise and devastating price of ambition. There are few bloodlines in Greek myth more cursed than the royal house of Thebes. Where most heroes grappled with mythical beasts or set sail in pursuit of distant thrones, the Theban kings waged war against their own families, their destinies forever intertwined with the ghosts of the past. Their saga wasn't etched in bronze tablets or celebrated in triumphant songs. Instead, it was a chronicle of riddles, madness, and cold-blooded murder, a testament to the insidious power of fate. Even the very foundation of their city was steeped in ominous portents and seething unrest. Thebes began with a quest, a desperate search for a lost sister. Cadmus, a Phoenician prince, brother to the beautiful Europa, embarked on a perilous journey to find her after Zeus, the king of the gods, had spirited her away, disguised as a magnificent white bull. His search proving fruitless, Cadmus sought guidance from the oracle at Delphi, the priestess whose pronouncements were whispered to be the voice of Apollo himself. "Abandon your search for Europa," the oracle rasped, her voice echoing in the sacred chamber. "Instead, follow a cow until it collapses from exhaustion. Where it falls, there you shall find a city." Obedient to the divine instruction, Cadmus wandered the land, his gaze fixed on the animal. Finally, the beast stumbled and collapsed upon a lonely hill. Before he could begin the rites of foundation, Cadmus dispatched his companions to find fresh water. But the spring they discovered was guarded by a monstrous serpent, sacred to Ares, the god of war. The serpent, with scales like polished obsidian and eyes that burned with ancient rage, slaughtered Cadmus's men. Enraged and determined, Cadmus confronted the beast, his sword flashing in the sun. After a ferocious battle, he managed to slay the serpent. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, then appeared before him, her gray eyes filled with an eerie light. "Sow the serpent's teeth into the soil," she commanded. Cadmus obeyed, casting the teeth upon the earth. From the furrows sprang fully armed warriors, the Spartoi, or sown men, their bronze armor gleaming. Born of violence, they knew only conflict, and they immediately turned upon one another in a bloody frenzy. Only 5 survived the carnage, becoming the founders of Thebes' noble families, with Cadmus as their king. But the slaying of Ares' sacred serpent did not go unpunished. The god of war demanded retribution, and Cadmus was forced to serve him for 8 long years as penance. Finally, his service complete, Cadmus was granted Harmonia, the beautiful daughter of Ares and Aphrodite, as his wife. The gods themselves graced the wedding with their presence, showering the couple with gifts. Among these gifts was a magnificent necklace crafted by Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith. It was a masterpiece of artistry, but it was also cursed, destined to bring ruin to all who wore it. And so the doom of Thebes began not in hatred, but in celebration, cursed by beauty and blood. Generations passed. Cadmus's daughters met tragic ends. Ino, driven mad by Hera's wrath, plunged into the sea with her child. Actaeon, Autono's son, was torn to pieces by his own hunting dogs after accidentally glimpsing Artemis bathing in the forest. Semele, beloved by Zeus, was tricked by Hera into demanding that he reveal himself in his true form, only to be consumed by his divine fire. And Agave, in a Dionysian frenzy, ripped her own son Pentheus limb from limb, believing him to be a mountain lion. But it was through Cadmus's great-great-grandson Laius that the true tragedy of Thebes would unfold. Laius became king and took Jocasta as his queen. Yet the gods had not forgotten nor forgiven the house of Cadmus. An oracle delivered a chilling prophecy. If Laius ever had a son, that child would kill his father and marry his mother. As in so many Greek tales, the warning was not enough to prevent the very sin it foretold. Laius, driven by desire or perhaps a fatalistic urge to defy the gods, lay with Jocasta, and a son was born. Seized by terror, Laius ordered the infant's ankles pierced and bound together, then commanded a servant to abandon him on the slopes of Mount Cithaeron. But the servant, moved by pity, could not bring himself to leave the child to die. Instead, he passed the infant to a shepherd from Corinth, who in turn delivered him to the childless king and queen of Corinth, Polybus and Merope. They welcomed the boy as their own, naming him Oedipus, meaning swollen foot, and never revealed the truth of his birth. Oedipus grew into a clever and proud young man, but whispers of his true parentage reached his ears, fueling a deep unease. Desperate for answers, he journeyed to Delphi, where the oracle repeated the same horrifying prophecy once spoken to Laius. He would kill his father and marry his mother. Horrified, believing Polybus and Merope to be his true parents, Oedipus fled Corinth, unwittingly running straight towards his predetermined fate. On the road, at a crossroads near Daulis, he encountered a stranger, an old man, proud and imperious, traveling with an entourage. A dispute erupted over the right of way, tempers flared, and in the heat of rage, Oedipus slew the man and his attendants, never realizing that he had just killed his true father, Laius, the king of Thebes. Unaware of his patricide, Oedipus continued on to Thebes, which was then under siege, not by an army, but by the Sphinx, a monstrous creature with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the face of a woman. She preyed on the city, devouring all who failed to answer her riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Oedipus, with his sharp intellect, answered without hesitation, Mandy. Defeated, the Sphinx hurled herself from a cliff. Thebes rejoiced, hailing Oedipus as their savior. In gratitude, they made him king, and in accordance with tradition, he was given the widowed queen Jocasta, his mother, as his bride. Years passed. Oedipus ruled wisely and well, and he and Jocasta had 4 children, Eteocles, Polynices, Antigone, and Ismene. But a plague descended upon Thebes, a creeping sickness that withered the land and poisoned the people. The oracle proclaimed that the land was cursed, stained by unpunished blood, and that the plague would only cease when the murder of Laius was brought to justice. Slowly, agonizingly, the truth unraveled.